Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hi, everyone. Before you start with this next episode, we would just want to let you know that there's a little bit of wonkiness with the sound. It isn't all the way through, and honestly, it's only when Jennifer and I talk, but when the guest is speaking, you don't hear it at all, and she's the majority of the episode, and it really is such a great episode that we want you all to listen to. So please excuse the tech issues and the sound wonkiness, and stay for the entire interview. Thanks. Today, Jennifer and I are joined by another good friend of mine, Melissa Kunnap. She is an actor, writer, director, and lover of horror films. As our Halloween episode, we are having Melissa come on here and talk to us about scary movies and women in horror films and women behind the scenes of horror films and just horror films in general. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, ladies, for having me.
Yay, it's so exciting. How did you get started in horror, and what is it that you love about it?
That is a great question that everyone always asks. That's always a fun question. I initially fell in love with horror as a child. My mom did not filter anything I watched, really. So I would get to watch horror movies. So I watched Child's Play. I probably was 5.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe, I don't know. I wasn't old enough probably to watch it. It had been out quite some time. I loved Chucky. Like, I thought he was creepy and cool, and I loved him. I didn't have any siblings growing up, so I used to torment my cousins with all the horror movie knowledge I had as a child. And one year, my cousin got a doll for Christmas, and it was the Chucky doll. I told her the story of Chucky, right? Because she had never seen it, and she got really scared and threw it down the stairs of my grandparents' basement. And I remember getting in trouble by my aunt, but my mom thought it was very funny, so we had a private little laugh about it. But yeah, so since a very young child, I have just loved horror, and I think it's just, I love that human reaction when people are scared. There's something, to me, kind of just magical that happens because it's different for everyone. Really enjoy seeing what that is for different people, especially through the lens of film.
So, did you not get scared at all as a kid seeing
No.
these movies?
No. It was like the opposite. With my uncles, we'd watch Creep Show. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yes, I do.
Absolutely love Creep Show, Tales from the Crypt, those kind of, they're comedic now that you watch them. But back then, they were still maybe comedic, but to a kid, they were like, oh my gosh, that's so scary, all the different monsters and things. Anything horror related, I really, really enjoyed.
Well, since we're so close to Halloween, what are your top 3 must-watch Halloween movies?
That's a tough one. I like to do a little bit old school. So top 3 is tough. Somewhere in the mix will always be a Candyman, whether it be the original, sequel, the new one, which I absolutely adore. I really like Pumpkinhead. I don't know if you
I don't think I've seen that one.
film. It's
I don't
really
know that one.
weird. It's an old movie, but there's just something fun about the creature in it. I just really love that movie. Trick or Treat is absolutely fun. I don't know if you've seen it. It has Sam's like the little pumpkin kid. No, okay, well that one's really fun. Those are probably 3 of my top, probably a little bit older films that I still watch. Yeah.
So, do you go in more for like the gore, or with the psychological ones, or like the religious ones? Like, what's your, like, this is what you're going to go to every time?
That's tough. If it's horror, I'm probably going to go to it regardless what the subgenre is. But I do love a good monster flick.
Okay.
I love some great monsters. Even in sci-fi film, doesn't necessarily have to be just straight like slasher horror monster guys. But anything that has a good monster in it, and anything with a practical effect, that someone took the time to build this creature, right? So
Mm.
it's not so much like the special effects or like video effects in it. I love anything that someone actually took the time with their hands to build, and there's like the blood gushing, or like when you do the slash, the blood comes out. Anything like that, I am all for. And I love to even watch videos on how that's done, or the process. So yeah,
Wow.
anything like that.
Is there anything that does scare you?
Yeah. So, or at least gets under my skin, would be body horror, because that's very real and you can like
Mhm.
feel that. So anything where there's like, I don't know, like a fish hook going through an
Ew.
eyelid, or
Whoa.
something exactly that right there. You can
Okay.
feel that and you're like, no.
Oh,
Yeah.
Those kinds of things will definitely get a reaction from me, because I'm like, no, don't do it, don't do it. Because you can
so
feel
like the
that.
ones where there's like bugs under the skin. Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
like those
no.
always get me. And I'm
I
like,
hate those.
you can't not watch, because I love watching, and I'm like, how'd they do that? But body horror is one that I'm just like, ooh. Or real stories or what get
Okay.
me. So,
Same.
and specifically when people will tell you their real stories of like something spooky, so like supernatural or paranormal sense kinds of things, so like ghost
Mm.
stories and things, but things that have personally happened to them. Those are always the stories that I find really stick with me, and I'll be like, maybe I should turn a light on. But
That's
yeah.
funny. I have a hard time imagining you being like, yeah, I'm gonna turn all the lights on now. Like that happens to me all the time whenever I see a scary movie. Like for days after, I'm like, let me go ahead and turn all these lights on, and let me look under the bed, and let me look in the, pull the shower curtain back. So
Oh, I've
Yeah.
definitely karate chopped my shower curtain if I'm home alone and I'm like, I heard something, I swear I did, and I'll just like hit the curtain. It's usually my cat that just ran by. She likes to play in the shower, but yeah.
I've never understood that response, because it's sort of like, you think there might be something in the shower. I'm not going to look. I'm the one in the movies going, don't go down there, girl. Don't go down those steps. Don't do it.
No, yeah, no, I'm
don't
not going
see
in to investigate like something creepy. I'm not, but if I'm home alone, I can't just like run out my door and leave. And I think I know like there's clearly nothing gonna be in my
Of course.
shower, but I will look in my shower. Now, if it's something real, like wake up, or if I'm like home alone, my husband's gone or something, and I wake up to a strange sound, I'm checking all the cameras outside to see like,
got
did
it.
somebody sneak in my home? I'm not leaving and going to investigate.
Got it.
Right on.
Got it. So it's only the ridiculous stuff that you're like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna
I'm
watch this all
probably not
day.
gonna check under the bed either.
I'm not looking under the bed.
Something about looking under the bed that really truly creeps me out, and I don't know what
Oh.
it is.
Same.
See, I'll do it, but I stand kind of far away and I kind of look.
Mm-mm.
Like I don't know. It's not like I'm gonna be able to outrun anything, but I
No,
do it anyway.
we're gonna become best friends, and you just live there now under my
Yeah.
bed, and I just accept that.
And
I'll
I'm not
sneak
going to
you
let
some
my foot
snacks.
fall.
No.
No
Mm-mm.
foot
We're
over
gonna
the
set some
edge.
boundaries with the monster under the bed.
I agree. Now, Raquel told me that you have been involved in movies, horror movies, that you made one.
I've made a couple short films, just feeling out
Cool.
trying to find my style or my voice through short film. So I've done a couple. I did a short for the inaugural 72-hour horror films. That was really fun, and that was a few years ago. And just getting a team together and writing and having to film it and edit it and submit it within 72 hours, which
Wow.
was a big thing to bite off on your first film as a director, and it's just involved in the whole process. That was really fun. But I had an amazing team, and it was called The Stain, and it was just like a really fun thing to do. And then I really fell in love with that, and I liked that. So I did a second short called Feast a few years ago.
Oh, I saw that one.
Yeah, and it's so
That
fun,
was
and it's
good.
like a ridiculous storyline, right? Like it's just fun. I was just finding my style and voice. And I was lucky enough to have a really great creative partner, Jason Wynn, who's an amazing writer and director himself. help me with that and kind of coach me through, and we could find out what worked and what didn't. And that was a lot of fun. We got into quite a few festivals with that film and won an award at
Oh, cool.
what was previously known Women in Horror. It's now Renegade Film Festival, the shirt I'm wearing.
Awesome.
So that was like really fun. And now I just finished, or it's a group project with Ava Davis and Francis Ching. We did a experimental, we'll call it like a experimental horror docudrama, if you will. It's an experimental film with
Mhm.
horror undertones, but it's a really personal piece. So it involves talking about being split between two parts of your identity.
Mhm.
And I couldn't imagine making a film about that because it was very personal to me, and it started as a personal project and grew. Expressing or exploring that, if not in the lens of horror, because it's something that I connect with and love. So we shot that, and it involves three people. So myself, Francis, and Ava, and we talk about, or we show rather, what it's like to be split between two parts of your identity. And
Cool.
that should be finished in a couple months, and we'll be submitting to some festivals, which I think will be really scary, honestly, because it is so personal. All the dialogue in it is words we've either said to ourselves or other
Mhm.
people have said to us, and none of them are kind. It's a really tough film, and I hope that it connects with a lot of people. I'm very nervous. So that, I think, is going to be scary. That, I think,
Yeah.
those real personal things are what's scary.
It's words from all three of you or words
Mhm.
from yourself? Okay.
So I talk about, or in it we show, because we don't speak in the film. My piece involves the struggle with being biracial, my personal struggle
Mhm.
with identity around that. Ava's talks about her struggle with identity as a trans woman. Francis's talks about her being torn between her American but Asian sides. So it's really personal like that. So it'd be a lot of things that we've heard that have contradicted how we feel or how we identify, either things we've said to ourselves or others have said.
Sounds so powerful.
I hope it is.
Yeah.
So doing that film, has that been really cathartic?
It has been. So yeah, so initially that was a piece I was just going to do for myself with Ava, that I just wanted to like express myself and get something out that's like just something, right? Create this something for myself, and I wasn't going to release it for anything. And I was talking to her about it, and she really liked the idea, and she wanted to be a part of it. And I was like, absolutely. I was like, I would love that. And then we thought, well, you can't have an even number, like you can't tell the story of just two people in it. So we had to really think about who might fit that or have a story to tell. And that's really kind of a sensitive thing to ask somebody, right? But luckily we found Frances, and she's like, yeah, I would like to be a part of that. And I have something to talk about. Yeah, it's just been really cathartic. And it was 4 years in the making, because it happened, we wrote it before pandemic. It was a very different piece when we initially wrote it. It had a lot of moving pieces. It had a lot going on. And then after pandemic, I was like, I want to make this film. I haven't changed my mind about it, but funding wise, we're going to have to cut it back
Mhm.
and just make it bare bones script and props, and just, everything needs to be minimal, which I think actually made the story better. It made it more human, and you can see more human emotion in it, which I absolutely love.
Can't wait to see it.
We just have we're at film lock now, pretty much. Then we'll go in and do like, color, special effects, sound design. We have a sound designer. He's gonna go in and do his thing. But yeah.
Wow. I think that's so interesting that you're working on that, that you're using it as something to kind of help you work through something. I was looking at, some articles and things about women in horror getting prepped for today. And there was a lot of talk about horror movies helping people work through issues. So I think it's really cool that you are doing this film.
Yeah, and I think that works not only just for women, but really any minority group.
Hmm.
That's something that works really well. If you enjoy horror or not, it probably can lend to your film, and yeah, I just really love it.
I have been a person who really kind of got turned off to horror because of the gore of probably the 80s, like the Nightmare on Elm Street and that kind of horror. But recently my young daughters have been reintroducing me to horror, and through doing this episode 2 years in a row and then also watching movies with them, I see kind of where feminism kind of starts. There was like a few horror movies that came out probably in the 70s that had some real feminist background, and then I see it again as a
Mhm.
resurgence now. What do you think about feminism in horror movies?
I absolutely love it. I think it should be in all genres.
Sure.
Personally, I think it lends something to horror that you don't traditionally see, and especially if women who should be telling those types of stories do it.
Hmm.
I think they just lend a voice that perhaps a man couldn't express in a film. Like a man's version of feminism or how he might be feminist is just different than when a woman would show that in a film. And I just think that's really important to just have a woman's touch on that, especially talking about feminism.
And the women's
So,
touch being from the writing, perhaps the
From the
acting, but
writing or even perhaps the directing aspect, right? Because we know that, right? We know what it's like
yeah.
to be a woman. We, we know what it's like for other women. We're able to tell those stories in an honest, coming from an honest and truthful place that sometimes all the research you can do can't
mhm,
help you with that.
right.
Right.
So yeah, a woman's touch is just, I think in horror is, it's refreshing and fun to see new projects that come out.
Do you have any favorite women in horror, whether they be writers or directors or anything else, women behind the scenes that are creating in the space right now?
Right now, mainstream wise, the new Candyman, which was directed by a woman, Nia DaCosta,
Oh,
I thought that was amazing. I know a lot of the everything that was out was highlighting Jordan Peele involved, and he
mm,
absolutely was, but she directed it, and I
mm.
don't know if you've seen it,
I haven't, but now I'm going to.
but it's really an interesting take on Candyman. It's a totally different story than, it's not like a remake or anything. But I really, really enjoyed that film, and Candyman's one of my absolute favorite.
How did her version differ?
Well, it's a different film all
Okay,
together, so it's not like a remake or anything,
okay.
but it's just I feel like it just had so many more human moments in it that
Ah,
you could really feel, and you were like, "Oh, that got me." It might have just been me, I don't know. But I felt like it was had so many more of those, like, human moments that
mhm,
perhaps only well, in this case, I think, personally, only a woman can showcase. I think that's yeah, I really enjoyed that film if you haven't seen it.
okay, I'm gonna put it on my
Watch it
list
and tell me,
now.
like, watch well, I mean, the original is the original. It's an amazing film. I would never say anything bad about that film. But like, watch the original and then watch
Okay,
this one, and you might see the difference. The film
okay.
also totally different times, right? So
Right, right. Yeah.
that's also a thing to take into consideration there. But
Okay,
yeah,
I have homework now. Thank you.
And I've also heard that sometimes what you see in horror films is a kind of a direct reflection of society and politics in the
hmm
way that they portray women or they portray other marginalized groups can be
Candyman
what's
does that really
it
well.
does.
hmm
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, highly recommend just watching that. It definitely highlights some of those. There's some moments that I feel I'm not gonna ruin it, but there's some moments that I know some people won't get
Mm,
or understand, but like as a black person, you're gonna be like, there's just some moments that you're like, that scares me or that I respond to that. I think it did a really great job. or maybe even just like as maybe a black man. Like my husband really enjoyed that film, and he's like, "Oh gosh, there's some great moments in there."
We've kind of skirted around it a little bit, but specifically, how did you get into horror? Did you start in acting first, or was it a school? Yeah.
Always been a fan. When I started acting, I started going to more film festivals,
Okay.
and I was in a horror film that was at the initial Women in Horror Film Festival. When I was going to the festivals, I was like, there's a lack of diversity. And I was like, maybe I want to write my own something and start going. And then if I get to do a Q&A, I can talk about that. And I can highlight how easy it is to be diverse in a film without it being about the diversity, right? Everyone wants to see themselves in a film. And I found it honestly quite easy to find diverse casts in front of the camera, behind the camera, the crew, right? So I really enjoyed kind of showcasing that like you can have a diverse film and it doesn't have to be about that. It can just be a film. Especially like it should just be a film if that's not your lane to be talking about. But yeah, I got into it making my own films because I just saw that lack of representation.
Has that started to change any since you first started getting into it?
So when I've been going to festivals and even just watching festivals, because I've been on watching, like screener films and everything for different festivals, I've noticed a lot more content coming in as well, which has been really great to see.
It seems like for women in horror, and again, this is not my forte, but the main trope that I see over and over again is the final girl trope. Are there other newer things that are coming out that are much more exciting than that?
Yeah, I mean, Final Girl is always going to be a thing, and I do
Yep.
enjoy it. I've seen lots of new things where it doesn't even have to fit, right? A trope. It can just be about the story, which I love that about some films. Trying to think if I could think of a current
Babadook
film,
kind of
but I'm
did that for me.
Babadook was great. That is a
Yeah.
great film.
I was surprised by that one because I expected the gore and the monster, and
but it didn't need it.
it didn't, and it was so good. It was so good. Yeah.
People talk about that film constantly. Like people love that film. And I think that's a great example of not letting your film fall into, right, like a trope or something. But yeah, I think there's some that can be retired, some tropes. That just,
Which ones? Which ones should we retire?
Well, let's stop. I mean, I think we've started doing a great job of just stop killing Black people first. I don't know why.
Yes.
Or any person of color, like that can absolutely go. The dumb blonde, let's be real, blondes are dumb. It's not cute anymore. Unless your movie is specifically making fun of tropes, then I will love that because then that just fits. Like Cabin in the Woods, right? Like it has every trope you can think of. Yeah, I think there's a lot of new stories coming out that just focus on the story, and it doesn't have to fit into a category.
Do you think there's any horror movies that, okay, this is probably a two-parter. Are there any that really should not have been, like they shouldn't have had a sequel at all? And then
I can think of some.
I know, right? And then are there any that you think, wow, this really would, it would be cool to have a sequel to this one?
I would say, what is that movie? I just watched this movie recently. I think it's called The Descent.
Okay.
Oh, The Descent.
Yeah, they made a second one.
Yeah,
That wasn't my favorite.
Yeah,
it wasn't my favorite. I'm not ever going to say a movie shouldn't have been made because it's a lot of hard work, and kudos to anyone that has made a film. Did I enjoy all these? No. But, I mean, you made a film. Awesome. But The Descent, I will say, the second one wasn't my cup of tea there's been at least one Hellraisers that I wasn't a fan of. I'm so
Okay.
excited for the new one. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Trailer.
okay.
Woman Pinhead. I mean, what? There's
That
an
movie too.
There's
actual black
feminism.
Cenobite. I was like, what? So yeah, I'm very excited for that one. But I'd say that there's at least one Nightmare on Elm Street that missed the
Mm,
mark for me.
yeah.
So definitely some I personally have enjoyed, but I am sure other people watch on repeat.
Yeah.
So I live on Elm Street. Those movies are one of the reasons why I stopped watching horror.
I loved Freddy. I just
The slash 'em ups.
yeah. The bathtub scene, right? With the claw comes out. I love that scene. Also like a young Johnny Depp.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean,
there
I
is
love
something to
that.
that. Yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
can't be mad at that.
Exactly. Exactly.
The other thing that I've heard a lot of people talk about when it's women in horror is that either it starts with a lot of violence towards women, or it starts with a rape or a sexual assault. And
Mm,
sometimes it's through that the woman kind of becomes the victim, but also the monster at the same time through their, like Jennifer's Body, for example, when they,
Mm,
mm,
I think
mhm.
they tried to sacrifice her, and then
Yeah,
she's the
that.
victim, but she comes back
the
as the
monstrous.
monster.
The
Yeah.
monster, but like she definitely gets her revenge on a good amount of people. I liked that film. Yeah, that was a tough one to digest as a woman. I'm like, okay. Because then you start to feel bad for her victims because they're not all
You do.
Mm,
Yep.
that like they're not all bad. And I'm like, oh goodness, now she's the monster. And I don't think you should portray, in my opinion, I don't think you should portray victims as monsters.
But there
mm-hmm.
is a thing in horror where it sort of transitions that way a lot of times,
Mhm.
and especially for women. You don't see a
Mhm.
lot of men characters that happens to.
No. And people always kind of like rooting for the man, and I'm like, but he's a terrible person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, trying to think of like a current new example where that doesn't happen. But nothing's coming specifically to mind. It does
Mm-mm.
happen a lot more, I think, to women in horror.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's still some great films where the women's just the victim, and I'm like, yes.
Well,
Yeah.
do you think there's more of that happening now with more women getting involved in creating the horror films?
Absolutely. Even in the indie scene, like indie film, some of the films I've been watching, there's been a lot more of that. And you're just like, yes, like, please go out there and get revenge and don't become the monster. And there's some great movies like that, I think. I think the actual movie is called Revenge. I
Mm,
don't know if you've seen it. But
I
if you have
haven't.
Shudder, it's on Shudder. And that's
okay.
just for
Yeah.
horror movies. That's a
Yeah.
great streaming service. Revenge. I absolutely love it. But again, if you are not okay with rape scenes or things like that, don't watch
Mm,
that. But it does have that, but it is that like revenge. And I did appreciate the revenge at the end. And she didn't like turn into a monster. So
cool. That's a good message. You can get revenge and not be a monster.
and
That's good.
sometimes revenge is needed.
Warranted.
Exactly. Is there, aside from Candyman, because you've shown your love for Candyman, are there any horror movies that literally whatever you're doing, if it's on, you're gonna stop and watch it?
Yeah, it's one I mentioned earlier, but Trick or Treat, if that's on, I'm gonna
Mm,
watch it. It's a
mm,
fun, especially for Halloween. Like it's
Hmm.
for Halloween. Like that's what
yeah.
it's for. That I'm gonna watch. And I own this movie and I've watched it several times. But Us, I mean, it's a fairly, we'll say, newer movie. But
Mm,
there's something so creepy and wonderful about that film, and the
mhm.
actors are just so good in that film. I really love that. So that I will watch if it's on.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Really,
was
I
that was
love
a really
Jordan
good one.
Peele. So like Get Out again. That one's a tough one for me to watch, but I really enjoy it. That one, like I love it for the end because the ending you're expecting something else to happen. And I was waiting, and I was like, "Oh, don't do it to us, don't do it to us," and it didn't happen, and I was like, "Oh, thank God."
That's the best.
Please don't make me be upset at the end. So that movie I'll always like old school stuff. I like some like Twilight Zone or
Oh, yep.
That's
any of
good
the
stuff.
like Hitchcock, any of those kind of older films I'm
Yeah.
gonna watch. And literally any if it's Creep Show, I'm gonna stop everything I'm doing and watch.
Yeah.
And I've seen all the episodes a bajillion times. And the new season or the new series of it is really good as well.
Okay. I'll have to check that one out.
If you could, as a movie maker, make your ultimate dream Halloween movie, what elements would it include?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, Halloween movie. Um, I think I think because I grew up in the woods.
Oh, I hate the wood stuff.
I know,
It's
I
so
do too.
scary.
I know it's
So
been done
scary.
a million times, but something in the woods and there's just something about being alone in the woods at night that's just
Scary.
terrifying.
Yeah.
And as kids, we used to like play hide and seek in the woods behind my house or friend's house, like camping in the woods, like all of that. So it would probably be something in the woods.
That reminds me of the most horrifying Halloween scary movie ever, which is Children of the Corn. Do you guys
Oh,
remember that?
yes, I
So
do.
Yes.
scary.
That movie
It's so
scared the
scary.
Were
daylights out
so
of me.
creepy.
So scary. Even
Oh,
every time now as an adult, if I see a cornfield, I'm like, I'm not going over
yeah.
there.
No,
I'm
no,
Yeah,
not
and
going
I'm
near.
not doing a corn maze. Sorry.
no,
Anything with like creepy kids,
Oh no.
that
the
just
kids are
wakes
the
me up.
worst. Creepy kids are the worst. Oh,
Or dolls. Or
like
clowns.
dolls are okay.
Or cl-
Kids, I'm like, no, get out.
Yeah,
or
that
stuff
Yeah.
with
movie.
like religion. If it's
Oh
something
yeah.
like the devil's coming or a demon or you're possessed and you're going to hell. Yeah, those scare the daylights out of me too. Oh
Me
yeah.
too.
I'm a giant chicken. I'm just gonna go ahead and put that out there right now.
Oh, okay.
I loved watching these movies, but then they affect me for days after.
Okay.
But I like the whole scare thing.
Well, what about Poltergeist? When the little
Poltergeist.
girl's watching the TV and
Yes.
it's like, they're here.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
so
Oh,
the only girl's like the cutest little girl. And
I
that line,
know.
yeah.
it's just so creepy when she says it. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's so scary. I'm like, no,
Oh.
get me out of here.
Well, one with like a creepy kid that really just it totally imprinted on me was The Bad Seed. Have y'all seen
I
that
don't
one?
know
That's
that one.
probably
Uh-uh.
from like the 40s, maybe. It was black and white.
Maybe.
And it was on in the middle of the night. I woke up, I was a little kid, couldn't sleep. So I go into my mom's room and I'm like, well, I'll just watch TV. And of course, this movie comes on. And at first, you don't know what it is, right? Because it's just like this little girl, she's skipping along, and then basically this little girl like kills all these people. And it scared the hell out of me as well, I don't know, like I was 7 or something. I was like, it's a little girl and she's so scary. Yeah, scared the hell out of me.
I think also scarecrows are creepy.
Oh, yes.
But
Yeah.
like think Jeepers Creepers, like he was up on the thing
Oh,
as a scarecrow.
that was the scariest movie.
I hate scarecrows, and nobody better ever play a trick on me pretending to be a scarecrow, because I swear to God I will stab you, because I'm scared of scarecrows. Like, I hate them. I don't want to be like alone near a scarecrow, because I'll be like, we about to
Right.
battle. I hope
Yeah,
you're safe.
again, not going into any corn mazes. Don't want to see any scarecrows.
I think it has to do with like the bag over the face with like
Oh,
there's just
yeah.
something about that, especially if it's done well.
Oh, yeah.
It's just creepy and weird, and you're like, some eyes could be under there. Like,
Oh, yeah. Or anything with like they're gonna kidnap somebody and like peel their skin off, like that kind of stuff. Just, but that doesn't mean I'm not gonna watch the movie. I mean, I'll still watch
oh
it.
no,
I'll just
yeah.
be scared as
I
hell.
mean, I'm gonna go near a scarecrow. I might punch the scarecrow, but they're probably my least favorite thing. So maybe there's a scarecrow in my film. I don't
The woods and a
Oh,
scarecrow.
I
right.
know. And a corn maze.
Scare Yep, there's a scarecrow, like, chasing someone through the
Ugh,
woods.
no,
Oh.
I don't like it. I've heard it said that horror is the genre that has the most female leads, that most movies outside of
Mhm.
horror generally focus on a man, and women are the character that helps with character development for the man. But in horror, that's different. In horror, we have a genre that's full of female leads. Any idea why that is? Why that translates for humanity?
I don't know, that's a great question. I feel like women are great problem solvers.
They
Quick
are.
on your
Mhm.
feet, right? Like, constantly have to be fixing problems. So that might lend to it.
Mhm.
But, yeah, I'd say, like, older movies, probably there's so many women because also, yeah, they're there just to give the man something to do, right?
Right.
Save the woman from whatever.
Have
That's
space.
changed quite a bit. Just women trusting their inner voice, right? Like, or that thought in your head, like, "Something's wrong here, don't do that." Just trusting that voice in your head a little more,
Mhm.
um, probably lends to it a bit.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know, I think we're a little faster at problem solving
And
Mhm.
multitask.
and
Mhm.
multitask
It's
in
interesting. What do you
general.
think, Raquel? Why are women the leads in horror?
I think it's maybe because they weren't mainstream.
Horror
So
movies themselves, you
right.
mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
horror
Okay.
movies generally aren't, or I mean it's changing now, but generally weren't mainstream and tended to be lower budget, or women were probably involved, right? And you could have more women in that sort because people just weren't paying that much attention. I mean, that's a very cynical way to look at it, but I think
It's
that
one
maybe
take.
has something to do with it.
Well, they're definitely
Yeah.
paying attention now. I mean,
Yeah.
horror movies are the thing.
You know, one thing that I find really interesting is like with the last Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, she's what, like 60 something? And
How old
you
she is now. Yeah.
yeah, and she, she's a total badass in that movie, and she was the heroine again in that movie. So you've got an older woman who's in
Mhm.
the lead. So I thought that was really cool. And then like movies, what was the term that I saw today? Hagsploitation movies, like Whatever
Yeah.
Happened to Baby Jane and Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, like those kinds of movies where there's older actors who are in the lead in those movies. Like horror movies give an opportunity for people outside of the norm to have a spot in the movie. I think maybe that might have something to do with why horror is a really good venue for people to kind of get into it.
Hmm.
Am I just like totally reaching on that? What do y'all think?
No, I don't know. I think it's a valid hypothesis. I'm not sure. That's why I asked the question.
I do like what you said. I really love when I see older characters
Hmm.
Mhm.
have an actual purpose and a role other than just like, hey, they're a tool to drive the story, but they don't have any real substance. And
Right.
Hmm.
I think there's so much value in an older character who people actually listen to.
Right.
um in film in general. But horror, yeah, it's not just that kooky old person, right? Like
Yeah.
people actually listen and they don't just like kill them off because they're slow or something, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
people in their 60s aren't slow and out of shape, let's be real. Maybe some people, but for the most part, like
Yeah.
they're a great character.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Have you both seen that show? It's only one season is out so far. It's called The Yellow Jackets.
I haven't. It's in my queue, but I have not
Mm-mm,
seen
I
it.
haven't.
Cue that up because it's interesting because it tells the story of teenagers, but then it
Mhm.
also flashes to the present, and it
Mhm.
tells the story of them as adults, and it has a lot of actors that you're younger than us, but that Raquel and I would know from childhood are playing these
Mhm.
adult roles in it. It's not, I don't know if I would really call it horror, but it's on the edge of scary. It's
Mhm.
something
Okay.
traumatic happened to these kids in their past, And so you see a lot of that, but then it flashes back and forth. There's a lot of age diversity in that because they're leads as teenagers, but they're also leads as the adults. And
Oh
it's a
wow.
really interesting story. I can't wait for the second season to come out.
That'll be good. Yeah, I'll have to watch it. It's definitely
Yeah.
in my queue.
I have more
It's,
homework now. Man.
yeah,
Yeah.
too much to watch.
I specifically wrote a feature that I'm still editing, but that has older characters in it who are honestly just really badass. And I just appreciate any film that showcases diversity, whether it be race, sexual preference, age, any of those types of things. Yeah, there's just something so wonderful about showcasing that in a film. So I'm really
Mhm.
glad that there's some films starting and shows that are starting to do that.
And then my other question I had was about kind of the role of sexuality, bodies, maybe gender exploration in horror, because it seems to be also kind of a gateway genre for those types of topics as well.
Mhm.
What do you
Yeah,
both
and
think of that?
I think, yeah, I don't know, I can't really talk outside of my own world, but I as a viewer very much appreciate when that's because that's real life, right? We all have
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have friends, I have family, like everyone should be represented in film. So I really appreciate seeing that because that's what I see in my normal day-to-day life. So I absolutely love that. And I think horror is a great genre, especially if it's told by people in those different communities, because those are great
Mhm.
stories and they lend like a personal experience that maybe some other people don't
Well,
have.
you said you've seen a change from when you first started going to the festivals to now, when there wasn't much that was new and representational, and now there's a wave of it. How do you think that change has happened? Like, how did we get more stories there, and how can we continue to encourage that to happen?
I think a lot of it has to do with different communities saying, "Hey, we're here. We're making content. This is
Mhm.
us. Take it or take it or leave it." But also younger people, right? Younger people are getting
Mm.
into film, and the new younger generations are very different than
Mhm.
ours, and they're more open and they're
Right.
able to talk about things, right? So I think that's a big part of it as well, just those
Nice.
younger filmmakers, but also just different groups being confident and comfortable saying, "Hey, here's our film, right? Like
Mhm.
here's our stories." There's more of that.
Touching on that, do you think it's ever okay for somebody who's not part of a particular group to try to tell that group's story?
No, I don't. It's not
Okay.
a in my opinion. If we'll just go with who I am. If you're not a black person, you shouldn't be talking about or trying to tell a group what the black experience is.
Mhm.
Because you're an outsider looking in, right? Your
Right.
your idea and view of what that person's experience is what you see, and you've never experienced that, right? You can have
Right.
a black character, but
Mhm.
you definitely shouldn't be saying how it feels to be this black character.
Right.
Like
Right.
that's not, in my opinion, that's not their someone else's place. Like,
Right.
yeah. So I'm never going to write a character and say what it's like to be a gay man. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know that. How That's not my story to tell. I will put any kind of character, any person or character in my story, but I'm not going to say what their personal experience is because that is definitely not something I can tell.
That's a good point. I mean, that's come up in a lot of different things, and I mean, even conversations that I've had with certain friends lately about, I don't know whether it's books or movies or something, and whether or not it's okay for the people who wrote it to have written certain characters and to have taken whatever position that they took with how they created that. So it's good to get another viewpoint on that.
Yeah, if
That's
definitely if it's a person, right? But if it's an
Mhm.
experience, I've never been shot, but you can write about that, right? You can research that,
Yeah.
you can talk to people who've been shot, but yeah, I don't think any amount of research is gonna make it okay for you to tell, like, a story from someone else's being, right? Like
Yeah. 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 That's a good point.
I think it's a really interesting concept because as a woman, I have spent a fair amount of my time over the years trying to explain to men what it's like to be a woman
right.
with utter failure because they don't understand, and although they can empathize and although they can
Mhm.
understand some of the challenges, they have never actually been in my shoes and walked down the corridor as a woman. And mostly I talk about it in work related areas, being one of the only women, and what I experience versus what they experience. Sometimes I think they refuse to understand, but sometimes I think they actually cannot. They have
Mhm.
not, they don't have
Yeah,
the reference for it. So I
Mhm.
get that. How can you tell someone else's story
that's your
legitimately?
whole story of your film, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Then maybe rethink that. Yeah, I would say please write stories with that involve other characters, but just don't make that the whole story, right? Like that's not your story to tell.
that's not your
Um,
focal point.
right.
Mhm.
But I love when people do their research on like a topic or something that's
Mhm.
not necessarily a part of their life, or like if you're writing a piece of folklore and it's not a piece of folklore, reach
Yeah.
out and do the research, and that you can see when people do that, right? Wherever that folklore comes from, talk to people in that community and they've read and they do and all that, then that's fun and interesting. And I think
Mhm.
that's great in filmmaking or storytelling. And some people might say, hey, if that folklore doesn't belong in your culture, then don't write it. But folklore is like something fun, or it doesn't have to be folklore, just something like that is I think always fun to explore. And that's how you learn about different
Mhm.
cultures.
It's also interesting to think of it through the roles as well, because traditionally in movies, we have had able bodied people play disabled roles. We have had cisgendered people play, I'm not even sure what the right term is, but we've had people play roles that they probably shouldn't be playing instead of finding an actor who embodies the characteristics of that role
Mhm.
Yeah.
and talking about who should be playing these roles.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't feel comfortable filling those roles with people who are outside of that,
Mhm. Mhm.
especially, and I honestly don't know the correct term, but able-bodied versus not. If I write a character who's in a wheelchair, I would like to cast somebody in a wheelchair. Like, there's plenty of actors. Now, if you absolutely can't find someone, I mean, does the character need then to be in a wheelchair? I don't know. But
Right.
I'm sure again, I would have to like really talk to different communities before I would make that decision.
Right. Well, it sounds like you are a very thoughtful creator and filmmaker, in that you really make the effort to have diversity behind the scenes, in front of the camera, in all aspects of the projects that you work on. Kind of makes you think twice about why people in Hollywood are like, we just can't find anybody to do blah 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 blah
There's
blah.
plenty of people. Also, like some stories, like if they're in a specific time period or area, like clearly you're not going to have a totally diverse cast in, let's say, like The Woman King. Like
Yeah.
that is not like that is a black cast. So
Yeah.
you can't just be throwing people in there, right? That's you can't
Right.
just be throwing in people. So like there's some instances where like yes, it's absolutely necessary for those films to be, especially if they're like real life. You're not going to cast someone to play Abraham Lincoln in a real story about him who's like, I don't know, like me, right? Like it's not gonna be like that's not gonna happen.
It seems like that there definitely has been a change in the way people are creating movies and a change for the better.
Yeah, I love that. I yes,
Yeah.
and I love whenever I watch films for festivals, just seeing how much it's changed just within the last, I don't know, 5 years.
Mhm.
There's so many more stories coming in.
And what can people do to help support that change?
Go to film festivals, right?
That would be cool.
Um,
I've never done that. I should do that. We should go,
um,
Raquel.
People
Yeah,
put a lot of
absolutely.
work into, especially independent film and short film, or even
Mhm.
independent features. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So just supporting those films and filmmakers, share
Mhm.
their work online if they have a festival or they're in something. That's always huge. Or I know a lot of people do fundraising for their film. Just share that. That's a
Right.
great way to, you don't have to donate if you can't, but you can share it. That's a great way to support people.
You said that you're working on a piece right now that you will submit to a festival, but do you have anything that's in a festival right now, or have anything that
Mhm.
we can link to so that our listeners can see more of your work?
I don't have anything in festival. Besides horror, I do a lot of comedy as well. With Critical Crop Top, I know you're familiar with them.
Mhm.
There's a short coming out. I don't actually know. It's still not released yet. But you can follow Critical Crop Top and they post all their stuff there. And then on Instagram, I'm on there. I'm always posting about what I'm doing on there. Life, Love, Adventures is on Instagram.
Cool. And we'll put, all your links and everything
Yeah.
in our show notes. One thing that I wanted to ask you before we let you go, I'm really interested in the whole experience of the festivals. Now, you said that you judge at the festivals too, right? At some of them?
Yes, I've definitely been one of the screeners, which is you watch
Okay.
literally every film that comes in and say and judge it, and that filters it by like
Okay.
who's gonna get in, right? So the festival,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
will watch and see what all the screeners have put. But I'm a juror on the Renegade Film Festival, and so I get to nominate all the films that are in the festival. I get to watch, so I don't have to
Oh,
watch
wow.
every film, just the films that are in the festival, and then nominate those for different awards.
Very cool.
Mhm. And there's
Wow.
some great films already.
Wow. What do you think is your favorite part about being a juror?
Ah, that's so tough. Kind of just seeing what the trends are or the
Mhm.
topics that are popular coming through. That's always interesting, and sometimes it's a surprise. You're just like, "Oh, interesting." I really enjoy that, and I have a feeling because of COVID, right? Like,
Mhm.
so many films are about isolation and these different topics,
Right.
and they've been really creative on making films during the pandemic that was just maybe like one person and a camera, and I've seen some amazing things come out of that. Really just seeing everyone's creativity and personal style and flair,
Mhm.
and in some films you can just really see what they're passionate about or like excited about in their story.
That's awesome. I wanna go to see more festivals, and we can people can generally just go, right? Like, it's
You can just buy a ticket. You can usually buy a
okay.
ticket to a certain block depending on which
Okay.
festival. So you don't have to like buy the whole day pass. You should because it's really fun and you can hop in and out. You can just pick which block you want to go to if you like horror
Neat.
comedy or just a regular film festival that's not horror
Mhm.
related. You can
Mhm.
pick, and it's something wonderful about watching a film that's told in a whole story in like 7 minutes, right? They even have micro shorts, which I think are fantastic. And it's like
Wow.
3 minutes or something like that. This is just a whole film in just that short amount of time.
Very impressive. Okay, I'm gonna start going to film festivals.
It seems like has to be on the bucket list now to go and check it out.
There's a
Well, and
lot locally in
yeah.
Atlanta, like a lot.
Oh, okay, good. And we'll be supporting, new and upcoming artists.
And there's always a Q&A at the end, so on most of them. So if you have questions, you can actually ask the people who made it, and I always think that's really fun as an audience member to just get to ask questions.
Oh, well, I know you are very, very, very busy, Melissa, so we are going to be cognizant of your time and respectful. Thank you so much for being on the show and talking to us about horror movies and educating us about all of this. I have lots of homework now, which I'm going to be spending a lot of sleepless nights because I will be scared out of my mind.
Yes, and I will be watching The Bad Seed. Is that what
Yes,
it's
the
called?
bad seed.
Yes, The Bad
Yes.
Seed. Okay.
Yeah.
And Yellow Jackets.
So
Thanks,
thank you
ladies.
so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Oh, man, I learned a lot.
What's the top thing you learned today?
Well, two things maybe. One, that there's in a lot of cases, there's more to horror movies than just, gore or, a lot of killing. Like if you think about it, if you pay attention, sometimes there's a story there. There's some lesson, or I don't know, there's something political behind it, but there's something there. It's not always just, oh, look, somebody got chopped up with a hatchet.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I really, really want to go to more film festivals. I mean, I've gone to, like a couple of things here and there, but I never really made a concerted effort to go to the whole thing. And I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm supporting all of these people. It was just, oh, my friend did this, or I know that person, let me go. But now there's so much more to it. I want to support more people, and I want to support the whole process. So
Yeah, and especially if like the process is about changing the content of what we were watching
mhm,
to what we could be watching, which could be better, could be more inclusive, could be more stories from more points of view. And the movie that I really want to watch after hearing this is the original Candyman, and then
yep,
watch the new one and see
yep,
the nuances of a similar take of movies, but in a different time period. I want to
mhm,
see how it's sort of changed, because I think back to that movie Carrie, which is one of the first horror stories I ever watched, and I think about how it was that story of her being the victim turned into the villain. She dies in the end. She doesn't even make it out of high school, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
how has that changed? I think now that we've really taken a lens into kind of the feminine role of horror, I think I need to stop being a chicken and just start watching again.
mhm, same,
Yep.
same. All right, I I
Happy
got a lot of homework.
Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
The favorite time of the year.
Woohoo! Free
Oh,
candy.
here's my mask.
It's a
Happy
great mask, Jen.
Halloween!
Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast, or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.